Hey Pickleballers, welcome to another episode of the PickleBros podcast, episode 5. Again, as always, thank you guys for the reception and the feedback. It's just been so well received from everyone, and that is just so much fun for us to hear back from you guys on everything. Likes, comments, subscribe, so keep it coming. Today's topic is one that is near and dear to the PickleBros, and in fact may be the first topic that sort of kicked off what this is. Stolp, do you remember that very first question you asked in a group thread?
Of course I do. Third shot drops versus third shot drives, an ongoing controversy amongst the PickleBros and the pickleball community.
I think all pickleballers, that is perhaps the most discussed thing, third shot drops versus third shot drives. But before we get into it, we're going to go into our DUPR check. With DUPR's new algorithmic update, things move faster and they appear in real time. So we're just going to get me out of the way right now. 4.35.
I'll jump in. 4.53. You confused me after the 3553 mix up there, but had a 0.01 drop from 454 to 453.
All right, I'll go next. So I'm also 453. I went down a little bit this week after playing with the PickleBros.
It's a tie race in second there. Tim, where are you sitting at, big guy?
Yep, I went up 0.09 to 4.79 after playing with the PickleBros and after playing some more yesterday morning. So,
ooh, are you going to go join a better podcast now because you're higher rated? Like, oh, you don't want to hang out with us because
you're making me think about it still.
Oh, okay. Man. And actually, so the four of us got together and played. Viewers of the channel or subscribers will probably have already seen it. It went up on the main channel. We recorded it. Tim and I were great beneficiaries and jumped up quite a bit. Tim, give me your thoughts on our play session, any insights, just commentary on the PickleBros. By the way, I think it was the first time the four of us had devoted just the four of us in months.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's amazing how much we talk about this sport, and yet the four of us don't share a court all that often. It's bizarre. So that was really fun, just getting out there with you three. And I'd say Eoin might have been one of the best players there for sure. I thought good Eoin. Now Eoin, there's a lot of variance in Eoin's game. When he shows up though, and he typically does for the big matches that count, and these all counted. We all knew these were going into DUPR. He showed up in a big way. He and I started off together, and we won in 3 games. I think that third game was 11-6, I believe. Yeah. So 11-9, 11-7, 9, 11, 11-6 was our total score. And it was pretty solid. Jesse, over the course of the day, was steady as usual, the sensei. Stolp, the whole deal with Stolp is try not to let him eat from the kitchen line because, man, when he gets going there, he's scary and deadly and all those things. So we won our first game, and then I don't know how much of a recap you want me to give for the.
We don't have to go through the scores. I'm just, what is your general impressions how everyone played? Like, for instance, one thing I learned about Stolp was, I mean, we were inside and it was like 88 degrees outside. We had a hot box going. In Stolp, I didn't realize how much the heat and lack of air movement was actually bothering you.
Yeah, I don't know if it would have bothered me normally, but first of all, let me just get all of the excuses for my losses out of the way. I was out of town for the week prior in Minneapolis, didn't get a chance to touch a pickleball paddle. So, of course, that's why I didn't go undefeated. You know, that had to be it. But, no, to talk about just the facility itself, beautiful court. And if you haven't checked out that video, check it out. And I think we're going to drop game 2 today or sometime soon as well. We didn't get the whole thing just because we're learning this video recording
technical
editing process, but we're mic'd up. We had 2 mics. So that's going to be so fun going forward. So my initial thought out after my excuses of losses was, yeah, it was hot 80s with limited wind indoors, had to turn on the fan, whatever. But
Limited
the fan or the microphones were so fun. So
Yeah.
Jesse and Ian had this great idea to mic us up. So look out for that moving forward. That was a ton of fun. I will say, just personally, I was a little off, and I think not off. I just was medium to below medium, and
I agree.
I remember Ian saying something that was probably minorly offensive to other people. He's like, dude, I don't want you to be, I can't even remember how you put it, but just don't be so aggressive, dude. I want you to dial it down so we can orchestrate points or something like that. And I actually responded to that very well, because sometimes I will force the issue and I will reach too far and I'll take balls away from it. But when you play with Ian, you can tell when those happen because I could hear you groan. I could be, oh, that was like, I know you were like, that's mine. And I didn't need a microphone to hear that. But
one thing I hope our viewers will appreciate is how honest we are with each other. And like, you're a deadly, deadly player at the kitchen. But I think one of your weaknesses is you need to still be more patient. Allow yourself and your partner to facilitate and build points out for you. And like, if you had a weakness, it would be you want to get messy too soon, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that we won a game. We took it to 3.
Yep.
And I think it was that second one that you made that adjustment, and I loved it. So yeah, completely agree with that.
Yeah, just to sort of give the overall recap. So Tim went 3-0, and the rest of us went 1-2. So props to Tim. He played great. Tim, you always play great. But all those games were pretty close, and I feel like the 2 losses that I had, I feel like if we played those over again, maybe we would have won. You know, it wasn't like they were absolute blowouts.
Yeah, no, it was really competitive games. But also I had a tournament over this last weekend, and I'll go quick because it's not the most exciting thing, but headed out to Steamboat, Colorado. It was a 5-hour drive to get out there. That was pretty brutal. I took my daughters, my wife out there. They went hiking and just enjoyed being out there on the western slopes in the valley while I played. Took second, went 6-2. It was double elimination bracket, which I have actually never played in. Amazingly, of all this pickleball I do, I always end up in round robins and then end up in medal play. So
Wow.
the double elimination was a little intimidating. My partner and I smoked the first round guys, and then we lost the second round, and it shouldn't have happened. But sometimes just things aren't vibing well. But what I'm really proud of is we battled all the way back, 5 more matches on the back draw. Didn't give up in the games to 15. Didn't give up more than 6 points in our closest win. And so we won 5 straight to get back to the gold medal match against Mick Tingstrom and Charlie Tingstrom, good friends of ours, good friends of the show. They took care of business in the finals. It was 3 games, but our 2 losses were 11-3 and 11-0. So in the games that they won, they put a beat down on us. And actually, shout out to Mick and Charlie. They ended up in the finals against each other in mixed, and Charlie ended up coming out on top of that. So Mick was gold and silver. Charlie was double gold. The Tingstrom brothers absolutely owned Steamboat. So want to give our buddies a shout out there. Also, I wanted to point out that this tournament I went to did not report their scores to DUPR. And we've kind of, as reflected last week, that was frustrating. And the comparison to National Pickleball is, and by the way, other series of tournaments is applicable. However, this was the single best run tournament I've ever been a part of. They started 30 minutes early. There was never longer than 20 minutes between my 8 matches. I had a ref for 5 of my 8 matches. Like, it was a really good experience. And even though the Steamboat Classic is not going to be DUPR reported, I will be going back. It was just a wonderful experience. And I DUPR logged my own matches, and 3 of the 5 matches were logged and validated within 24 hours by my opponents. So just really, really expertly run stuff. But
did you ask them beforehand, like when you went out to the court, were you like, hey, let's put this in DUPR, is that cool with you? Or you just played and then afterwards you just submitted to them and they still went ahead and validated?
We just played. There was no conversation. And kind of my perspective is, hey, you played in a tournament. You should validate them. And I do understand they were under no obligation to do so. But I put my losses, I put every match in there. Some of our opponents didn't have dupers, but our match that we lost, I put them in there and they were validated too. So it's not just cherry picking my wins and my losses. Like if I have a match, I want it recorded. So
that's a good just pause point to talk really quick about duper etiquette with that. Because Jesse, I know when we first got up and going with my mentality of put it into my duper, let's go, just add everything. And we play at 5 a.m. So there's a lot of different variables on the line. Jesse, could you just talk really quick about duper etiquette in your mind? How to do it? What does that process look like when you are going to duper log a match?
To me, I feel like you should have consent of all 4 players before the match begins, tournament or not. So like me and Stolp are playing in a tournament on Sunday up in Arvada near Denver. And I don't know if that tournament is reporting results to duper. I doubt it. So I suggest, Stolp, if you want those matches to count towards duper, that we just mention that before we begin each game with these guys.
I fully disagree. That's hilarious. If you're competing, if you're in a tournament, you are obligated. Excuse me, that's hard to get that word out. You're obligated to validate. It is mandatory. You're competing, even if the tournament is not duper logging it. I don't see any workaround to say, well, I know we were playing in a tournament, but this wasn't be duper log. It's like, no, we are here to compete. You have to validate and get your stuff in. I don't think there's any conversation about it.
Well, so it's interesting. It's interesting that you automatically associate a tournament with duper, because I see those two things as being separate. So it's interesting that you would just assume that it's okay to enter your scores
interesting.
in. And what's interesting about that too is that it only takes one opponent to go in and validate your matches. So it's possible that one of your opponents was not on board with that.
That's true. The way I that's actually a really good point. One guy might not be happy, but the reason I'm associating duper with the tournament logging is duper is just the 10,000 pound gorilla in the room, right? Like it has dominance in terms of what pickleballers think about how to rank ourselves and how to rate ourselves. It's not, we have UTPR, we have WPR, there are other solutions, but it's more on their monopoly within the mind of players that gives them.
Jesse, I am going to ask beforehand, because I agree with both Ian and Jesse. Aren't I so just friends with everybody here? Because I think, Ian, it is an expectation that if you're playing on a tournament, things are on the line. Duper should be included. But Jesse, to your point, it's not a duper tournament. So we should be respectful and ask. And if they say yes or no, it's not going to affect me one way or another.
Shame them.
What does affect me is how Jesse said Arvada. I've lived here for like 8 or 9 years, and I've never heard Arvada be called Arvada. So I'm going to have to wrap my head around that. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't want to say anything, but I did catch it as well. But Jesse, there's some other tournament news that I want to move us into and talk about. Do you want me to prompt it in or just go ahead and roll? Because I know national.
Yeah. So anybody that watched our previous episode knows that we had some pretty harsh words for National Pickleball, and we mentioned that they didn't report the results to duper. And shortly after that episode came out, they sent an email to, I believe, to everyone on their mailing list, which is a little bit unusual. It's not like they're sending those emails every day. Usually it's just to announce a tournament. So I got this email and it said, a lot of people are asking us about whether we report to duper, and we don't, but it's not just us. And so they pointed this out, that a lot of tournaments do not report to duper because Pickleball Brackets, the new tournament website, is not integrated with duper. So some tournaments are doing it, but a lot aren't. And in fairness to National Pickleball, we sort of singled them out, but their point was, hey, this is widespread. And it was cool because I surmised that they were responding to our podcast. Maybe that's arrogant of me, but it was a neat feeling to think maybe we prompted that email. But I do think they raised a fair point that it's not just them.
Yeah, dare you say we actually have some influence? And actually, when you say it's not just them, one tournament, as you've discovered, is not reporting results to DUPR, and it blows my mind, actually.
Yeah, I asked the USA Pickleball Great Plains Regional Tournament, and they said no, we're not reporting to DUPR. This is a sanctioned USA Pickleball sanctioned tournament. It's one of the largest in Colorado. I think it's the second largest in Colorado, and I was really surprised that they're not reporting to DUPR, but it seems to be extremely common nowadays.
Yeah, and so our recourse then to continue to boost our DUPR is to once again start a new league. Tim, just want to plug your league that you just kicked off again. Yesterday was day one, I believe.
Yeah, yesterday was day one, and I'm really excited about it. We have really good players that are coming back and some new players that I've never seen or met before. So that's always exciting to get the new blood. It's great to think that word is spreading and people like this thing. But the greatest thing about it is that going in that every match is going to be on the line. Mm-hmm. This is a far cry from rec play, which is there's still a lot of ecosystems out there that don't know about DUPR, and they just know that there's tournament play and rec play. My sister playing out in Fresno in California, she's in one of these ecosystems. They don't know about DUPR, and there's a fair amount of people in that circle. So these DUPR leagues are a great way to get familiar with this level of play and this brand of play where everything counts, everything's on the line. And I love the update in DUPR where it's immediate. Mm-hmm. Yesterday morning, it was a non-league match, but we played sort of a round robin type format with 3 other players and myself. And after we played 6 games, we sat there and logged and validated all of our scores and watched as our DUPRs changed on the
That's
spot.
Great.
It was so sweet. And I got out of there and I messaged you guys. I'm like, guys, I'm doing this every single time. This is sweet. It's addicting. I love the instant gratification of it all. And yeah, man, I'm excited for the league to start too, because I just can't wait to play with new players, because that's what it's all about, is playing with new players. I love it.
Yeah, two things. First of all, Tim gave a shout out to Fresno, so holler at me, 559. What's up? Clovis Pickleball, I see you. I see you sharing our stuff. I represent the 559. I grew up in the 559, so represent. Second thing is, hey, anyone out there who doesn't know what DUPR is quite yet, or is learning about DUPR and is interested in improving it, one of the things the PickleBros have figured out is how to increase that thing is to play against and with multiple opponents and partners. Mm-hmm. So I feel like this DUPR league, the season 1 that Tim coordinated, my DUPR score increased dramatically, and I was able to play against high quality players from across our region, and I think that was extremely valuable. So get involved.
Yeah, if DUPR is something you care about, you definitely need to get out there and play with new people and see new people. But guys, we're nearly 20 minutes in here, and we haven't even started talking about what everybody here is here to listen to us talk about. So we're going to move on into drops versus drives on the third shot. We're going to go round and round on this. But what I want to start off by saying, when I was in Steamboat, my partner was just a little bit lower than me, perhaps in skill level. Actually, he was one of the people, I call him the Godfather. He basically taught me pickleball at Villa when I first started playing. I have so much respect for him, and kind of a lot of how I fell in love with drilling and started becoming the player I am was due to his influence. So while we were playing, my drive is really solid, and I was hitting hard drives. at the altitude up in Steamboat and really just trying to push the pace against, and we were in a 4-0 bracket. There was no 4-5 bracket. So we were in the 4-0 bracket, and I was really pushing the pace on my thirds, and he was struggling. Either the blocks would come back fast, or he had trouble in the transition zone with the volley resets. And so what I ended up changing my game plan to was I dropped everything, like almost exclusively dropped everything. And we had a lot more success that way. So I am definitely a guy who believes more in dropping than driving in terms of getting up to the kitchen line. I think a few of us may have counter opinions to that. And I will say you have to be able to do both. If you can't drive and you can't drop, you're not a complete player. But my most recent experience has me firmly planted on the side of drop it in. I think I want to move it over to Tim because you're the most outspoken opponent against me on this particular topic.
Well, what's interesting is I wrote an article about this one time for a pickleball blog, and it was because I started off as a banger. And, you know, like a lot of people do, they come out and their first approach to the game is to, oh man, I can hit it so hard. I bet you nobody hits it as hard as me. I'm special. I feel really cool when I do this. I'm going places. And then you quickly realize, okay, no, that's not how you play the game. You need to be able to drop. I mean, there's a reason why if you watch the pros, most of them are dropping their thirds. And so I quickly realized that, the reason why I'm not able to play with some of the best players in my area is because they don't respect my banging. They don't respect that I drive every single time, not just on thirds, but on fifths and on sevenths, although the point usually wouldn't go that long because I'd probably hit it out by then. But yeah, so I started playing this game. It's called Trash. And I haven't played it since, but it was just because we had an odd number of people showing up to the court that day. So one of the guys there introduced the game Trash. And I don't even know if you kept score. You just rotated out if you made a mistake. And the whole thing was there was a serve and there was a return. And then every shot after that had to go into the kitchen, including the drop. And if you missed it, you had to sit. And so that's like, I remember showing up to rec play the very next morning and I was doing the exact same stuff. I was driving, and I was bored. So then I recalled my lessons the night before from playing Trash. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start dropping. And it was awesome. I was so happy. It was so much more interesting just playing the game. It was more fulfilling to me. And so that's when I wrote that article. And yeah, my game jumped up. I started winning tournaments and, you know, I preached, no, you have to drop the ball. You have to drop. Now I should say this was in Georgia, different style of play than here in Colorado. But, my game's kind of come around since then. I have to say, and I'll get back to this a little bit later.
Kind of? Question mark?
Yeah, kind of. And what's funny too, Stolp, is when I wrote that article, I got a lot of laughs from people that know me. It's like, you don't drive, like you don't hit it hard. I'm like, well, not like I used to, but they didn't really appreciate the distinction in my game as much as I guess I kind of did. But especially here in Colorado, I've become a huge advocate once again of driving, because here's the thing, like if you say you're a driver, that's not to say that you're not dropping. It just means that you're not dropping every shot. Like you still have to drop. A buddy of ours, Louie, who gets talked about a lot on this podcast, he put it really nicely recently. He said that if you're driving your third shot, you're just giving yourself a chance at a free point. And that's a perfect way to say it. Like if you have a really good drive and you're able to get a drivable return for your third shot, and you really stick that drive, you have a chance that someone's going to miss that block or it's going to go for a clean winner. And if it comes back, you know, chances are it's not going to be a terrific shot. I on your opponent's side so that you have a chance to hit a really quality drop for your fifth shot. So you've got options if you drive your third ball. So I've kind of swung the other way, and now I'm a huge advocate in most cases for driving that third ball. It depends on what kind of return you get, for sure. You don't want to drive every third ball, but if that's a drivable shot and you have a good drive, I say drive 100% of the time for that third ball.
Sensei, I think among our group, you are known as the dropper extraordinaire. Give me your thoughts. Tell us why Tim is wrong.
No, he's not wrong. No, he's not wrong.
That's
So I'm sort of, my rating right now is 4.53. So I've played 4.5, but I've also played 4.0 recently. I've sort of just graduated from 4.0. And when I play 4.0, dropping works really well because, first of all, the quality of the return of serve tends to be lower. And then people can't really do as much with it with their fourth shot. But as I kind of move into the world of 4.5 and I'm playing people like Tim who are closer to 5.0 than 4.5, I'm getting these strong return of serves that are hard and they're deep and they have backspin. And we have a number of opponents that hit these return of serves, right? Like Eli. And it's really, really hard to drop that ball well. And even if you get a good drop, the players are skilled enough that they're going to drive their fourth at you. So you have to get into the transition zone, you have to do a split step, and you have to reset that ball. And sometimes you have to do the same thing again on your seventh and your ninth. And it's hard because you're talking now about getting not just one good drop, but like
4
2 or 3. Yeah. And so dropping is hard and at this level. And so I've been driving more recently. The problem is driving is also hard at this level. So I'm going to try to show you guys something that I wrote up. Let's see if this works. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I just took the first 2 games of our rec play the other day because those were the 2 games that we recorded. And I just went through and looked at everybody's third shots. And I try to classify them good, bad, winner. It's subjective. But basically, like if you look at this chart, you can see like Stolp. So Stolp hit 8 third shot drops, and most of them were good. And he hit 10 third shot drives, and about half were good. And so there's a pretty good balance there between his drops and drives. More or less half were good in both cases. Eoin is pretty much the same thing. But then we get to Tim, which is an interesting example because his drives were good, right? He had he took 15 drives and 3 of them were outright winners. 7 of them were good and only 5 of them were bad. But his drops were even better. He only took 4 drops, but all of them were good. So I thought that was interesting. And then in my case, I took 7 third shot drops, 5 of them were good. And I took 8 third shot drives and only 3 of them were good.
Wow.
So I think, are we back?
Yeah,
We're back.
So I think like the stats don't lie. Like what I need to be doing more of is dropping because that works better for me. I will drive from time to time still, but third shot drives are hard. It's hard to keep it low. It's hard to keep it in. And so, I think I'm going to become more of a dropper at this level.
Still haven't heard all this and then seeing the data that Jesse just presented. What are your thoughts on that?
Wow. So many things. I kind of like going last, just hearing all these different perspectives. But number one thing is video helps. I want people out there to know that if you video yourself, and Jesse broke that down statistically to give us insights, but you may think you play one way until you watch yourself play. And then you start to say, wow, my drives actually aren't that good, or I'm hitting a lot of my drives out. That might change some of your tendencies. Over time, it has with me. And personally, I've had the 3 of these dudes, my brothers in pickleball on this screen, break down my game transparently and tell me exactly what I need to work on. So I just want to start there. And you could see from my stats, I'm even in driving and dropping. And that's kind of where my mindset goes. And to Tim's point of like, I'm going to drive attackable balls. That's really a non-negotiable for me. If it's a high bouncing, shallow return, it's getting driven 100% of the time. One, because I think I can finish it. Two, because it's going to start some chaos and I thrive in that. Or it's going to put us on the offense. So I'm comfortable to attack the attackable balls. But to Jesse's point, as you start moving up levels, you're going to see returns that you're not going to be able to do much with, which is an issue. So I go to dropping. I really focus in on dropping. I like to drop to get myself up to the kitchen, get I like my partner to drop to get me up to the kitchen on third shots. So it puts, I love dropping as well. A lot of times though with driving, especially deep for me, and Jesse and Eoin has done a tremendous job of this over time, is my balls tend to go out. Like, and so I forego the point on our third shot. That doesn't help anybody. Like, would you rather have
It helps me.
Yeah. Would you rather have a crappy drive that you don't even get a chance on? Or would you rather have a mediocre return to where you can do something with it? So like I've been more postured towards conservatism on my third shot lately. And I think leaning into this tournament, Jesse, that we're going to play in on Sunday, that I've seen more success over a course of a month or two with me dropping versus driving. So I'm on team drop right now, but I'm on team drive when it's attackable.
I'm still firmly in team drop. And Jesse, I actually think I'm going to kind of wreck your data sheet here, but I want to ask you a question first is how did you, and I understand subjective, which is fine, the good versus bad, how did you parse that out in your mind? I'd like to understand that before I break it down.
Yeah. So if the third was high or into the net, then it was bad. And even if, so sometimes like once I hit one that was high and you let it go, Eoin, and remember it caught the corner and we won the point. So was that a good drive? No, it was a terrible drive. I just got lucky that you decided not to hit it. So usually I'd look at if it's high and if the opponent comes in and like counterattacks it at a hard angle and we weren't able to do much with our fifth, then I would say that's a bad third. That's a bad drive. Obviously, if it's out, that's bad too.
Yeah. So the way I see it is, and it's really cool that you went into the data. And like Stolp said, the video is paramount. I would like us, I think here's how it needs to be measured. The result of the rally based on the third, not what directly follows after. So if like you measured Tim's getting an outright winner on his drive, but and he had 4 good drops, but sometimes you don't know how the rally is going to end up if you choose to drop. Like if we looked at the game itself and said, okay, how many driven thirds result in a scored point for the driving for the odd shotting team, or how many points do they score off of drops? I'm going to say that the team that drops in their third is going to result and win the rally most of the time. And again, that's just my gut feeling on it, because a drop is rarely going to result in an outright winner, where a Tim drive is going to result in an outright winner. I believe it was a third of the time in what you measured. But I think that's not looking at how you're constructing the rally and building it from the ground up. So that third shot drive can end it right away. But say you drop me in, Jess. One of the things I do really well, especially because I play the right side, is I track that drop really well. And I actually follow in its wake up to the kitchen line. And then I get big and scary with my backhand to try and force my opponents to either, hey, if you want to challenge me and take your fourth at me fast, let's go with that. Or you can hit a very simple sort of hard cut dink angle to my dropping teammate who should already be in pursuit to the kitchen line on a good drop. So I think it's too short-sighted within the discussion itself to look at, was the drop good and was it a winner? Was the drive good and was it a winner? Look at how the rally itself ends. And I think you'll probably find, and I'm speculating at this point because I have nothing to support this other than my gut feeling, is that most of the time, if you try to do a slow approach to the kitchen on your third, you're going to win those points more often than not.
I don't know.
Well, that's
dropping.
Yeah, it's sorry, Jesse.
Go ahead.
It's tough to make that assertion, Eoin, based on the data that Jesse kept and the records of the prospective participants in that hit around. I mean, I think that, yeah, you don't know how the point's going to go, but the third and fifth shots are the most important shots of a rally, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And we can talk about the serve too, because we keep talking about, it's hard to hit good thirds off of good returns, because so many times those returns are offensive. But you have to remember, the guy that's got the chance right off the bat to be offensive is the server, which I think is exactly why we need to dedicate more time and practice to the serve, because you actually hit the ball first. You have a chance to go on offense first. And that's not a mentality that a lot of people have. But no, I think, you don't know how the point is going to go, but if you are the guy hitting the third, you have a chance to be offensive there. Now that takes away the possibility that the idea that the return was so good and you're on your heels. But for me, if you're driving that third, you're taking some time away from the returners, the guys hitting the seconds and the fourths. And I think so much of this game is taking time away from your opponents, not letting them get comfortable, not letting them get settled. And for one of the reasons why I like to drive instead of drop is because sometimes when I drop and I run up there, I know that those guys are getting a good long look at a ball. They're watching it bounce. They're able to set up and they're thinking about what to do with it. They have all these options. They can either speed it up, they can get into a dink game, but they're in control at that point. If you're the guys that are driving, you are taking those options away from them because you're taking their time away from them. And you're giving yourself more time because you're probably going to get a weak return off of that drive. And look who has the options now, you hitting that fifth shot.
Jesse, I know you also had some stuff you want to add.
It's tough. Okay. And this is where we can get into playing at high altitude too, is even when I hit like a pretty elite third shot drop, if I'm playing against Stolp or Tim, Stolp, for those who don't know, is tall and his arms are unusually long and he uses that length. Yeah, he's like an albatross with these arms. And so I'll hit this nice third. I'm like, oh, look at that. It's going right into the kitchen. Like, good for me. And he'll just lean in with his freakishly long arm. He takes it out of the air and he attacks it. And that doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily lose the point. But the point is that I have to then deliver a good fifth. And hitting two quality shots is harder than hitting one. So, and then with Tim will step back and wait for that ball to bounce. And again, I'm like, ooh, I hit a really good third. And he'll just whip that thing. And he'll whip it not straight at my body, but to the wings, right? And so I have to be so ready for that ball. And it makes it hard for me to advance through the transition zone because, like, I know I need to be set. I need to be balanced. I need to be thinking about letting that ball leave. And it's just hard. And then being in Colorado at the altitude, that ball bounces a little higher than it does at sea level. So I've played in Florida, I've played in Texas on hot days, humid days with a Franklin X, and it actually gets soft enough where it's kind of squeezy. And my drops work really well in those conditions because it doesn't really come up much. I really enjoyed playing there. But in Colorado, which is where I spend 95% of my time, that drop is just more difficult.
Yeah, Stolp, I think after Jesse, you've also spent the most time California, Florida, playing out there. I wanted two things to throw at you. The first, you can address the humidity, does the environment impact what you do? And then what you're supposed to do. What are you supposed to do when your partner's dropping or driving? How do you play that strategically?
Yeah. So I played in Florida, and humidity is real, and the environmental factors are real. So pay attention to that because it is a different game. Colorado plays fast. I actually think that lends to us improving our game quicker in some cases because we're playing so fast. Because when I went to Florida, the drops were droppier, if that's such a word, and slower. It felt slower because the air is like mashed potatoes. It's just so thick. Like you hit the ball, it doesn't go hard. You drop, it drops more. So I remember in Florida, like me attacking balls, and I was just hitting them with ripping them, and everything was going in. So I'm like, dude, I'm a driver times a million here because nothing was going out. I come back to Colorado, those balls are 4 feet out. Like it's just a different environment, and so you have to pay serious attention to that. And then when you're talking about what to do with your partner and your partner's third, everyone hopefully listening, and I know in this group, knows what it feels like when things click, when that light switch turns on and you are in sync with your partner. I've felt that a handful of times, but really highlighted by the time I played with Jesse a few weeks ago, and where he would serve, they would return it back to him. He would third shot drop, and in that process, I would be moving up to the court. They would try and get it back to Jesse as he's approaching the net. I would already be there, and I would poach. I poached probably 6 separate times that time, or that session, and it was because we were so in sync with Jesse's third shot drop. Everything was tailored off of that. And if they wanted to make a decision to third shot drop it or drive it or if they wanted to speed it up to me, I should say, I would be ready. But everything was predicated off of Jesse there. And I think knowing who your partner is and communicating that, if you don't have a mobile partner, you probably don't want to drive. If you don't have someone who's quick with their hands, you probably want to reconsider your shot selection on your third. So I think it's important, and it goes back to that alpha beta discussion and communication amongst partners.
Yeah, I was just about to say, in my opinion, you and Tim are some of the best poachers out there. And I'm capable of doing it, but because I'm on the right side and I'm right-handed, my backhand poach is challenging. And Jesse, I don't think you do it sometimes, but the outright speed you don't necessarily possess. But I did want to comment on the environmental factors. I honestly feel like playing in Colorado is like playing on hard mode in pickleball. Everything is faster. The balls bounce higher. They travel farther. And I wish I haven't played anywhere on the coasts, so I don't really know what it's like to get that humidity and that high air pressure. But I know when I went to Steamboat, which is 500-600 feet higher than where we are here in Colorado Springs, and the air did feel noticeably thinner. Man, I had a hard time in the warm-up, and it didn't affect the game because I had adjusted by then. But I was like, this is hard to keep the ball in. I was hitting it at 60% and was getting the results of a 70-80% drive. Say we were playing outside at MVP, or at our big local scene, in that Colorado sun, right? Because we're at higher altitude, the sun does impact a little bit more. Those courts get quite warm. And I even going up that high in the mountains, I noticed environmental factors, and that was only a couple 100 feet of elevation. So and when I watched the pros play, and I don't really know if this is true, but Ben Johns reportedly doesn't like playing indoors. That could just be rumor mill and grapevine and not be accurate. But because indoors plays faster and bounces higher, and he and Colin have such a soft game, and they like to drop and just dink, they prefer to play outside with a mushy ball with kind of that atmosphere. And so I think it really not only is there the discussion of drives versus drops, but where are you playing impacts the decisions that you make on it.
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in on that. So Stolp, you said you liked driving in Florida because everything stayed in, whereas I had the opposite impression. When I drove a Franklin in Florida, it was like the thing barely even moved. It was just ridiculously slow. I was like, this is, I can't do this. Like, I have to drop because my drives are totally impotent.
Yeah.
And so you were
and I
dropping
found,
that.
That's why I dropped.
yeah. Yes. I recently played in Newport Beach with my sister and brother-in-law. And that was the exact impression that I had when I first got out there and played was, okay, my drives are completely ineffective. They're super easy to see. They're super easy to read. And I got to start dropping, which is going to make me like everybody else here. You know, we're all playing the exact same way. And it's the big equalizer, right? But by the next day, by day 2, I was driving a lot. And it's because I realized I can control this thing a lot better. And it's like Stolp was saying when he was playing in Florida, so you can disguise your shot a little bit because you know that, well, I'm not going to hit it out. So I can take my time with this. I don't have to rush myself. And by the end of that day, yeah, I was doing the whole thing where I'm driving thirds and dropping fifths. And I was still super effective at doing that. So I just think a lot of this is adjustment. I remember when I first moved out here, I was like, I can't believe how hard everybody hits. Like everybody's playing so fast. And it was hard to adjust to. It was uncomfortable. But you get used to it. I agree. Out here it really is kind of hard mode because you feel rushed. You feel nervous. You feel like you're on your heels the entire time because of how fast the ball is flying. And forget about playing with a Dura out here. I hate it.
Yeah, actually, so I just had this thought. I know we've got some viewers in Indiana, Florida, Texas, California. All these people are probably listening to us and they're like, what are these guys talking about? You never want to drive. It's too slow. Dropping is so easy. Drop everything. It's like, I didn't realize actually, it kind of, we're having this discussion. Different people, depending on where you live, are going to have vastly different takes on this discussion and how to play it. Like if you play in a windy area, we're in Colorado, kind of the wind coming down across the mountains, it gets pretty windy sometimes. And depending on where the wind is, you can't drop anything because it's just your drop, if it's at your back, it's going to take that drop straight into a put away for your opponents. Or if you're dropping into the wind, the ball's not even going to get past the net sometimes. So it's like, all right, we're doing banger ball. Tim, I remember you and me.
Oh my gosh.
We're playing, you and Jared, our buddy Jared, and then Mick, I mentioned him earlier, he gold medaler in Steamboat. He and I were playing against you and Jared, and it was the worst wind I've ever seen. We had like 24 miles an hour. I don't even know why we tried to do this. Like we were just too stubborn to cancel. And it was like, what's the game where you press the buttons and it hits the little flaps and
pinball?
Pinball. Dude, it felt like pinball.
That game.
It felt like pinball. It was absolute madness. We were hitting everything as hard as we could. There was no subtlety to the game. It was so ugly. And so, like, yeah, wind affects how you're going. I was a pure banger that day. I drank the Kool-Aid.
100%. Me too.
But if the wind is behind you, you should drop, because if the wind is behind you and you drive, isn't the ball going to go out?
I found that when the wind was at my back and I tried to drop it, it just like the wind took the ball, put it on a platter, and said, "Tim, put it away for me." It was like I couldn't hit anything usable, you know.
There was like no way to keep that ball in the kitchen from the windy side.
It was such a pain in the butt. Do we think the ball affects this though? I was talking with a guy yesterday who's pretty well connected, and he said the next frontier of pickleball is the ball. That's the new innovation in technology. It's like there's an arms race in the ball and how they play, both environmentally, cracking, softness. Do you guys find you play differently? I think Dura and Franklin are probably the two most used balls, even though I know there's like Oso and all these, and Wilson's got one.
Selkirk is a good one.
Selkirk. I've never played with any of those balls besides Franklin and Dura. Do you change your approach?
So
the ball.
What I look for in a ball is if it's round and bounces. Like that's like the most important part for me. And honestly, I'm weird with the color preference. It has to be that neon yellow. Anything off with that, it bothers me. But this whole conversation around Dura and Franklin, there is differences. Like Duras do play faster, Franklins are softer, and you can do different things. But to this wind conversation, if you're not able to adapt, like you freaking suck. Like you got to figure out you have to find a way to play with anything that's round and bouncy, and in wiffle ball format. But I don't necessarily get too worked up about the ball as others do. Some people in this group don't get too worked up about paddle technology as others. It's like it's all here or there, but the one thing that pisses me off more than anything is wind, is that environmental factor of wind, because it changes your game so dramatically. You have to change your game more than anything else. So I don't care necessarily about the ball, other than up in Colorado where we are, it cracks. We're elevation, we're dry, we're cold. These things, we go through $20 of balls and sometimes a day, it seems. So that's my only ball conversation issue.
Absolutely. I guess, guys, to round it out, the final sort of strategic element to this discussion I want to bring up, drives versus drops, is tournament play. Because playing rec ball, playing at 5 a.m., playing what I call now picnic pickleball due to Tim, is different. Tournament competition play, you're more stressed out, you're trying to stay hydrated, you're laying everything out on the line for every rally. And I'll throw this at Jesse and Tim, who appear to be more on the line of the drivers. Is driving a sustainable strategy at the highest level competition on tournament day?
So I'll jump in first. I will just say this. There are certain guys that absolutely thrive on chaos, and that sort of controlled chaos game that driving sort of brings about. It gets them into it faster. They get into the zone more easily because they're just operating at a higher level, like jumping up and just like on high alert for every ball. And it can be hard to slow those guys down. You see those guys in tournament play because they are wound up because of the occasion. They are supercharged and they are ready to go fast. There was a guy that I played against yesterday, and this guy, I don't think he's been playing for that long. He's got some elements to his game that are a little bit less refined. But one thing this dude is an athlete. He is fast, he is long, and he hits the crap out of the ball. And I do one of those things. I'm not fast, I'm fast. I'm not long, but I like hitting the ball hard too. And I was getting so many good looks at drives yesterday, and my drive was on. I was smoking the ball. And you know what? It didn't matter. It brought out the best in this guy. It was my A game was his A game. And I'm telling you, like, I got these short returns with high bounces, and I was crushing it, and it didn't matter. He was crushing it right back in my face. And you might think, well, why don't you go to the other guy? Well, no, I'm not going to go to the other guy because I want to prove that I'm better than this guy. You know, it's a contest at this point. And he beat us in that last game just because he was into it more. He was faster. He was more intense, and it played
the game he wanted.
It played the game he wanted. It was also the game that I wanted. So in hindsight, okay, why don't I go to my trash roots and drop that third? Because I should have shifted into the soft game mode, and I didn't. Soft gear, and I didn't because I was too like, well, no, I'm going to beat this guy at what I do well. And it just speaks to the importance of, you got to have options. Like, you've got to do what's working and take your ego out of it. And my B game, I think, would have beaten his B game, that soft game. It would have given us the advantage. And you just, especially in a tournament, you really have to figure it out quick, what's going to work and what's not. And the sooner you can figure that out, the more likely that you'll have success in that environment.
Yeah. Jesse, I don't know if it should go without being said, but you're the oldest among us. Are you able to keep up that high-paced drive attack on a long tournament day, or does the fatigue end up setting in?
I don't know, because I've never really had a drive-dominated style. But I will say that it's harder for me to drill drives than drops. I can hit 800 drops in a session, and it doesn't take a toll on my body. But if I hit 800 drives, it will. As for tournament play in men's, I play the same way in tournaments that I do in rec play with you guys. I play rec play as if it were a tournament. So there's no change in my game. But I play mixed at 4.0. And I'd say about half of the women that I play against at that level have trouble with my drives. So I'm definitely trying to use that drive in mixed. And if it works, I'll just stick with it.
Yeah. Stolp, I want to pass it off to you to give us the final word, round us out before we go into the outro. Drops, drives, hit us.
Oh, yeah. Drops and drives. It's that never-ending conversation that changes week after week. I guarantee you, if we talk to Jesse and Tim and Ian next month, it's what's going well versus the opponents they've played against, and they will be playing that tune. Tim wrote an article, mind you, about why it's so important to drop. The guy, based on Jesse's statistics, dropped exactly -5 times. So, so I think that the name of or to round us out here is you evolve and adapt. You have to be able to do both. And just knowing about how the individual game's going, how your current play style is going, being able to adjust based off of what you're seeing and feeling on that particular day, week, month. It's going to change. I promise you, this isn't a set in stone conversation.
I love that. That is actually a great way to close it. Pickleballers, thank you for joining us for this episode of the podcast and giving us your time. Please like, share, subscribe. Email us if you feel any certain way. If you Floridians or Californians think these guys are blistering fools and they don't know what they're talking about when it comes to drops and drives, let us know. We'd love to hear it. Follow us, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all your podcasting platforms. We love it, guys. Appreciate it. So we love you. Stay safe and stay out of the kitchen.